The Caribbean is one of the most ethnically diverse regions in the Western Hemisphere. The Caribbean has a broad geographic and cultural scope, and the ethnicities across the region vary widely too. On a wide scale, a sense of pan-Caribbean identity unites all of the Caribbean people, though individual backgrounds and ethnic origins differ widely. In today's presentation, we are going to look at the various ethnic identities in the Caribbean. But first, a disclaimer. The Caribbean has been home to immigrants from around the world for more than 500 years, bringing dozens of ethnic groups into contact. So ethnic identity in the Caribbean is rarely a simple matter. It becomes a complex tapestry interwoven with each other. That being said, let's go through the main contributions to ethnic identities in the Caribbean and break down the various ethnic groups and origins of the Caribbean people. Please like, subscribe, and turn on the notification bell for our future videos. The first ethnic groups we should mention are the Amerindians. These are the ancestrally indigenous people of the Caribbean. The indigenous people of the Caribbean cover a vast group of distinct tribes, and though they are grouped as one ethnicity, they too have a variety of different origins. Most of the Caribbean was inhabited by members of the Carib, Arawak Taino, or Siboney groups of indigenous peoples who migrated from South America. These groups lived in the Caribbean potentially for hundreds of years before the arrival of Europeans and had many cultural exchanges with each other, including the Mayans and the Aztecs. Unfortunately, diseases, enslavement, and the persecution of these indigenous people at the hands of early European colonists killed what were the majority of people in the region. However, some Amerindians survived, and today, descendants of these groups along with other indigenous people are still to be found in pockets of the region. Most of the remaining indigenous populations of the Caribbean can be found in countries such as Guyana, which has approximately 78,000 indigenous people, Suriname with just over 20,000, and Dominica with just over 2,000. Over the years, however, indigenous Caribbean people have become more ingrained in society and can be found on other islands as well, though in very small numbers. Following chronologically, the next ethnic group of people we have are those of European descent. As many know, the first Europeans to arrive were the Spanish in 1492, led by the Italian explorer Christopher Columbus. Columbus was searching for a faster way to reach India, but found a new world. Soon after, the Portuguese, English, Dutch, and French all made explorations to the Caribbean and set up colonies where Europeans would make the journey across the Atlantic Ocean with the hope of starting a new life or striking it rich. Persons of European descent make up the second largest populations in most Caribbean countries, but while Europeans in the early period of colonization made up the majority of the ethnic groups in the Caribbean, they would quickly become overtaken by the next group on our list. While historians have uncovered indications that African sailors arrived in the Caribbean before the Europeans, the vast majority of Africans were brought as slaves during the period known as the Atlantic slave trade. From as early as the first half of the 16th century, Africans came to work as slaves on plantations. The slaves came mainly from Ghana, also known as the Gold Coast, Côte d'Ivoire, often referred to as Ivory Coast, and Guinea. Slavery lasted for more than 300 years, and its indescribable inhumane system, from the port of origin to the plantation, caused such severe psychological damage that the effects are still evident in our society today. The impact of slavery and the devastation colonization has had not only on the Caribbean, but other predominantly black regions such as Africa and the Americas is a topic for another time. But the impact slavery has had, and for how long it was, the economic system of the Caribbean has meant that Caribbeans of African descent make up the overwhelming majority of the Caribbean. Of those Africans who arrived in the Caribbean, nearly half came from two regions: Senegambia, the area comprising the Senegal and Gambia rivers, and the land between them, or today's Senegal, Gambia, Guinea-Bissau, and Mali, and West Central Africa, including what is now Angola, Congo, the Democratic Republic of Congo, and Gabon. The top 5 Caribbean countries with the largest concentration of Afro-Caribbean people can be found in Haiti, with approximately 8.9 million, Cuba 6.9 million, Jamaica 2.2 million, the Dominican Republic 2 million, and Trinidad and Tobago with just about 460,000. With just under 3 million blacks from the Caribbean living here in the United States, approximately 90% of black Caribbeans in the United States came from these 5 countries of Haiti, Trinidad and Tobago, Cuba, the Dominican Republic, and Jamaica. Next, we have one of the largest minorities in the Caribbean, Indians. From 1838, East Indians were brought from India to the Caribbean in large numbers as indentured laborers following the abolition of slavery. This labor shortage resulted in the indentureship system's introduction in all member states, except Barbados and Haiti. Nearly 500,000 East Indians were brought in to serve under this system, making them the largest group of indentured laborers. The number of East Indians brought to the Caribbean was so numerous, they became the majority of the population in Guyana. Indians also make up a significant proportion of the population in Trinidad and Tobago and Suriname and are found in the rest of the Caribbean. Trinidad and Tobago has the largest number of Indians, which represent 38% of its population, with over 460,000 self-identified. Indians in Trinidad and Tobago can trace their ancestors back to northern India, especially the Bhojpur and the Awadh region of the Hindi belt, and some Indians from southern India. In Guyana, the Indo-Guyanese, or East Indians, are the largest ethnic group at 44% of the population, and they are descendants of indentured laborers from India with over 347,000, while Suriname with just over 150,000, representing 27% of its population, followed by Jamaica, Belize, Puerto Rico, and Barbados. Continuing with smaller groups of ethnicities in the Caribbean, we have Caribbeans of Chinese descent. Caribbean Chinese are of Han Chinese origin and are a small but significant population in all countries, particularly in the Greater Antilles. Between 1853 and 1879, 14,000 Chinese slaves were brought to the British Caribbean as part of a larger system of low-wage labor bound for the sugar plantations. These original people settled in 3 main locations, Jamaica, Trinidad, and British Guiana, now Guyana, initially working on the sugar plantations. Most of the Chinese slaves initially went to British Guiana. However, when the program ended in 1879, the population declined steadily, mostly due to emigration to Trinidad and Suriname, which now have large populations of Chinese descendants. Further to this, when the United States enacted the Chinese Exclusion Act in 1882, many Chinese in the United States fled to Puerto Rico, Cuba, and other Latin American and Caribbean nations and established small niches for themselves in the society. It is no surprise, then, that the majority of Chinese Caribbeans can be found in the northernmost parts of the Caribbean. Jamaica has the largest population of Chinese Caribbeans, for example, with approximately 75,000 people, followed by the Dominican Republic with 60,000, and then Cuba with 42,000. Smaller populations can be found in Belize, Trinidad and Tobago, and Suriname. The last major ethnic group found in the Caribbean are the Portuguese. Portuguese, particularly those from the Madeira Islands, were also brought in under contracts of indentureship to work on plantations, similar to the Chinese and the Indians. Though the number of Portuguese who were brought to the Caribbean as part of this program was significantly less than other minorities, they still were a few thousand who made the journey to the Caribbean, which later became their home. The system of slavery did not provide for any entitlement to the slave. However, the contracts for indentureship included a low fixed wage, housing, and medical attention, as well as a grant of land or return passage on completion of service. In many other ways, however, indentureship continued a system of labor exploitation and degradation, which began under slavery. At the end of their contracts, the Portuguese, like the Chinese and Indians, moved to other parts of the Caribbean. Today, the largest Portuguese populations stayed where they first emigrated and can be found in countries such as Guyana, Suriname, and Trinidad and Tobago, followed by the ABC Islands, which have smaller population centers. Other ethnicities. As with any region, smaller groups of people have made their way to the Caribbean over the years. These groups may not have come in droves to the Caribbean, much like the list of ethnicities above, but have moved to the region and made the Caribbean their home, and became integrated into the culture. For example, the Arab community in the Caribbean, while minor, forms part of the Caribbean diversity. Arabs have made many Caribbean countries their home, with thousands living in Haiti, Cuba, Trinidad and Tobago, Barbados, Jamaica, and Suriname, just to name a few. Some of the oldest purpose-built mosques in the region can still be found in countries such as Suriname and Barbados. Check out this video on what the Caribbean territories are known for. As you can see, the Caribbean has a very diverse set of people who have different origins and backgrounds. But although we all have a different beginning to the story, we all share a common identity of being Caribbean first. The cultures and influences of Indian people have shaped much of the food the rest of the Caribbean consumes. The impact that Chinese immigrants have had on the Caribbean has shaped the connections the region has with culture, and the mixture of African, European, and indigenous identities has formed an overarching culture which incorporates every person, no matter their background. Yes, we are all one family. If this video was of some value to you, we would greatly appreciate it if you would give this video a like, subscribe, and turn on the notification bell for our next video. Thank you. This is J-irie Caribbean. We appreciate you watching.